Imagine dancing beside Michael Jackson. From the bad tours to the dangerous tours to even on the Super Bowl stage. Eddie Garcia did just that. He was even there doing that iconic lean during Smooth Criminal. Eddie Garcia has danced with Michael Jackson as a principal dancer for his world tours and also was in so many of his key performances and short films. I can't wait to pull the curtain behind some of those iconic moments and welcome Eddie Garcia to the show.
Hello, hello.
It's so good to have you on. Thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
Yeah, it's really fun. I've been doing this show for a few years now, and to be able to talk to you today is like such an honor because I grew up watching you on the stage and watching you in the short film. So I can't wait to get into the conversation.
Well, thank you again. Thank you so much for having me. I can't wait to share stories.
Yes. Okay, so for people that might not know, I want to give a little bit of a background on Eddie Garcia. So here goes. Dancer, choreographer, director. Eddie worked with Janet Jackson in the 1980s. He danced in the videos Nasty, What Have You Done For Me Lately, and When I Think of You. Shortly thereafter, at just 17 years old, Eddie began dancing with Michael Jackson, appearing in Smooth Criminal, The Way You Make Me Feel, Speed Demon, and performances like the Grammys in 1988, the Super Bowl, and the performance of Dangerous in 1993.
Yes.
Okay, so Eddie was Michael Jackson's principal dancer from 1987 to 1989 on the Bad World Tour and on the Dangerous World Tour in the early 90s. Eddie has also starred in TV and film projects and so much more, worked with Mariah Carey, Paula Abdul, Jennifer Lopez, Ariana Grande, I'm sure so many other amazing people. Eddie, again, welcome.
Thank you. I've been blessed. This has been an amazing, incredible journey for me.
Yeah, I mean, I can't wait to get started. Just seeing you in so many of these projects, so many iconic works. So let's just get started. Let's dive in. How did you start working with Michael Jackson?
So it began with I heard there was going to be an audition. Actually, I have to go back further. So there was an audition for a mystery project that Francis Ford Coppola was going to be working on. And that's all we kind of knew. We heard it was for Michael. So that was Captain EO. So I was 14 at the time. And I went to the audition. And I remember I was there all day. And then I got a phone call that I had gotten the job. And I was so excited. I'm 14 years old. I'm going to dance for Michael Jackson. And it's going to be the coolest thing ever. And the next day, they set up my fitting, so that I could, go in and get fitted for costumes. The next day I got a phone call from production basically telling me that they were no longer going to need me. And I was shattered. And then I got another phone call from production saying, hey, sorry about that. That was a mistake. And please come in, blah, 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 blah. And then I got another phone call saying that they were no longer going to need me. And I found out what happened was, Coppola was concerned about having anybody underage because of the long hours they were going to have to work.
Right.
Because the original story, Michael was always about saving kids and doing stuff to help kids. And so we were going to be the kids on the planet. There were two of us, the kids that he would come to save, that we were imprisoned by the, evil queen. And then he saves us and everything's, great. At least that's what I had been told, later. But then they cut that part of the story. They just took that part of the story out. So again, at 14 years old, it's pretty heartbreaking. I was like,
so close, right?
So close. And I told myself when that happened, I said, well, that's not going to ever happen again. So I worked really hard. I graduated when I was 16. I had started working for Janet and I got emancipated. So I could work like an adult, but I'd already graduated high school. Everything was cool. So then I get another, now we're flashing forward. It's there's an audition notice for Vincent Patterson. And it's, another mystery project that we all knew what it was. So we didn't know the song though. We just knew it was for Michael. So I went in, everything was great. They invited me to come back to the callback. And I was like, great. It was going to be the next day. I remember the day of the audition too. I asked if I could go in one of the first two groups because I was actually going in for a fitting for a commercial at the time. So they were really they helped me out. They were like, they made sure I was like, I think I was in the second group and they got me in. And then right after that, they were like, hey, just come back tomorrow. You know, everything will be set up and you'll be at the callback. And I was like, yeah. So I came back to the callback. I remember walking in and walking down the hall and I ran into Vincent. And Vincent walked up and he goes, what are you doing here? I was like, they told me to come to the callback. and he goes, oh, no. He goes, you already got the job. You don't have to worry about it. And I was like this, okay.
Amazing.
You know? So I didn't have to do the callback, which was fantastic. And I think what happened is, I believe that Michael was aware of who I was. And I think he was there when we were auditioning. We just didn't know it. And I think he, and the only reason I say this is that when we were working on Smooth Criminal, it's the part where he throws the coin. It goes across the room and lands in the jukebox. And then he does the little chest pop. So we were sitting there waiting while they were setting stuff up and he turned around and it's the first time he ever spoke to me. And he goes, hey, you know my sister. And I went, what? And he goes, you're in her videos. And I was like, yeah. And he goes, yeah, you do all the turns in Nasty. And I was like, I did. And he goes, was that a camera trick? And I was like, no, I did that. And he goes, that's what she said. And I was like, oh, cool. And I was like, it was I remember coming home from that day of shooting. And I was so excited that he knew me, from that, that he paid attention to that. And it was cool to know that he was supportive of his sister that way. You know, that he was very he was watching to see what she was doing. He was excited for her. It was a really neat experience. And to be able to have worked with her and then work with him, it was like, she prepared me, working with her and working with Paula prepared me for being able to be on a set with all these amazing dancers. And I was the youngest, by a bit. And being on a set with these adults that were people I looked up to. And I learned so much because we spent so much time doing that video or short film, as he would say, for me, that was like the best schooling I could have ever gotten. People will go to universities and you can't pay enough to get that experience because you're learning from the best dancers, from the best choreographer. Vincent created such an environment of creativity when we were on set. And I remember us watching Bandwagon and him explaining how this was, we were doing kind of we were emulating it, but not copying it. So we want to be inspired by it, want to be inspired by what they did. And then when we saw it, because we would individually go watch it, and he would go, you're going to be that guy. So you would watch a certain dancer in that film and that they had certain moves and okay, well, that's what he does. So I got to learn how to do that. So those are the things that then you would creatively bring to the table. I do the duck walk, which is throwing my hands going by him. Plus I was the youngest. So they had that pick somebody that could do that over and over and over and over and over. Cause now I couldn't do it at all. I wouldn't be able to bend that far. I'd be like, oh gosh, my knees.
It's funny. Sorry, go ahead.
Oh no. So that experience of being taught by Vincent about details and being taught about how to, it's not just learning a dance step, it's experiencing a moment. And those are the things that are they're so valuable. They're the things that I try to tell the kids that I teach. It's not just about the step, it's what's behind the step. If this is what you choose if you choose to do this as a living, you have to learn that. And I think kids that really understand that are the ones that you are seeing Dancing for Lady Gaga now. They're incredible because they're not just dancing on stage. They're part of the show. They're part of the experience. And I think that's the biggest thing that I got coming away from that. And that's how I got on the tour, just being on set. And he one day turned and said, "Hey, would you ever want to do a tour?" And I was like, "Oh, sure, that'd be fun." Not knowing that he was actually asking me like that day.
Right.
And then 3 months later, I get a phone call and they're like, "Hey, Mike wants to know if you still want to do the tour." And I was like, then I had to turn to my parents. I was like, "Can I go on tour with Michael Jackson?" And they're like, "Yep." And I was like, "Yeah."
And you were 17 at that point, right?
Yes.
So amazing.
Yeah. So,
When
I did the video, I was 17. We were in rehearsals. I was still 17. And then one day I remember Frank came up to me. He was his manager, Frank DeLeo. And he goes, "You never told us you were 17. I was like, "You didn't ask." and he goes, "Well, that's going to be a problem." And I said, No. I'm emancipated. So like I'm legally an adult. And he goes, "Oh, okay. No worries." and I was like, "Woo."
That's too
and then
funny.
I did turn 18 when we actually left for Japan.
Yes.
On our first leg. I turned 18 when we did that.
Okay. So that was good, all divine and good timing.
Yes. Great timing.
I want to just talk to you a little bit about Smooth Criminal and then get into the Bad Tour because we have a photo of you here in Smooth Criminal. And I wanted to give you a fact that you probably know already, but some of them watching out here might not know. But Smooth Criminal actually is one of the very few that has recently reached 1 billion views on YouTube in the fall of 2024. How do you feel about that? 1 billion views.
That's crazy. It doesn't surprise me though, because it's such an iconic video in the sense, people look at Thriller and see how special that is. I remember as a kid how that affected me. I was like, that's the coolest thing I've ever seen. It was truly, to me, bringing the musical back, because musicals were gone at that point. And it set a standard that from that point on, music videos became relevant. And then to be in something like Smooth was very interesting because the camera, you weren't watching people from afar, you were actually in it. Like the camera was inside of the club. It was following us. It was following him up the steps. So like, it was the first time that it was immersed. It was like, it was another character within the film. And I think that's what really, really sets it apart. Plus, what a cool idea, a group of gangsters and he comes in there and then he transforms them and they become the good guys at the end. Like it's crazy. Like, and I think that's what that essence of what his message was always about. You go in there and no matter how bad you might think some people are, you don't know until you get in there and you can change them. And I think that's a beautiful statement.
I love that. And yeah, I mean, it's so interesting because I did get the honor recently to talk to Vincent Patterson, and he was mentioning that like one of the things he did was give out kind of like acting exercises. And
yes.
Everybody had a character so that no matter where you looked, even if it wasn't during a specific like section of choreography or whatever, everybody was doing something. They were in the moment, like you said.
Yes, because he didn't want any dead space, and it goes back to what I was saying about like, you're not just a dancer doing steps. You're moving this story along from this point to this point. From the second he throws that coin, you don't keep your eyes off of him. I mean, it was we had gun holsters underneath our jackets, which you never see.
Wow.
With rubber guns in that weighed it down so that we could physically feel the gun underneath our armpit, which changes how you do stuff because you're aware that you have a gun underneath your like, but again, it adds another thing of realism,
Right. Yeah.
Like you see us reaching into our jackets. That's what we're reaching for. There's actually a gun there.
That like this blows my mind. I'm loving the like behind the scenes details because I could never have imagined,
Yeah.
Like,
yeah. It was wild because you put it on, and then you would get the gun holster on. It was under your, like under here so that you could reach for it.
So
And the weight part of it, that it actually weighed like a gun. So it was like, they were very detailed. The costume department was very detailed about how they did stuff. The hat tilts, Michael was very like, hey, we should do our hats this way, so that one eye is never seen. And that really always, that carried through even on the tour. It's like every time that you put the hat on, you want to try to get it to a space where you could almost see your eye because it makes it a little cooler. And I was like, okay, all right.
yeah, it's like that element of mystery. And like all of us fans always wanted more because we couldn't like get, we wanted that eye contact. We wanted to see what's going on and we just couldn't get it. And I mean, but that's what makes it cool. And that's what keeps us wanting more, I guess.
Yes. And the element of mystery, and he, especially with those kind of characters, that was very important to Michael and Vincent. Every time that you did a video, Vincent was all about like, be real, don't pretend something. He goes, be in the moment. That all the acting exercises that we did on Smooth, that also carried over to when we did The Way You Make Me Feel, because we were actually hanging out with gang members, and it was like, they were for real. Like, the Crips didn't really want to hang out with me because I was the Latin boy. So it wasn't like a thing you did, which was weird. Like, I was like, okay, I hung out with the Chicanos because they wanted to talk to me.
And this is all on the set? This is actually all happening. What?
Oh, yeah. They were telling us stories. I mean, one kid was like, he goes, it's been pretty cool, being able to do this with our parole officer. And he goes, yeah, they had got me on a manslaughter thing. He goes, but I killed the person. And I was like, oh, okay. Okay.
You're like, all right.
Like, he goes, they just couldn't prove it. And I was like this. Oh, wow. Okay. Fascinating story. Thank you for sharing.
So they had, I've always heard about gang members, but like, it's like, you never know, like, were they really? But it sounds like.
Oh yeah. Oh no, they were for
deal.
real. They were real. And here's the thing, even in that situation, again, kind of going back to, here are people that people sometimes will throw them away because they're like, well, they're bad people. And here they were given an opportunity to be on a set, to experience something different than the life that they've lived. And for them to be comfortable enough to actually speak to you and talk to you about real life stuff for them, that says a lot. Like, that says a lot about, first of all, that's the way the situation was set up, the fact that they felt comfortable with you and then talked to us. I found it incredibly touching, because they were starting to have another chance in life. And by doing that, this opportunity to be on that set hopefully changed their life and they became better people. And then maybe they can do outreach programs and help people from their areas. I know, like, I grew up, my parents, we lived in a pretty sketchy neighborhood when, I was first, when I was young, and my dad identified that it was getting worse. So we moved, but I was unaware of all the things, but I've gone back and it's still sketchy, but again, there's real people that live in those areas, outside of just the gangs, so I found the opportunity to experience that really, really cool.
Wow. Thank you for sharing that story. Things we never knew about The Way You Make Me Feel. I want to talk to you about the Bad Tour because that's just something that I grew up watching. So many of us fans know and recognize you with the big 80s hair and the makeup on. Bad Tour, there were 123 shows that you guys did from fall 1987 to January 1989. Record-breaking sales. And I want to kind of take you back to the beginning of the Bad Tour. Let's check out this video clip.
We want to commend you on hitting the highest A flat I have heard in my life.
As far as cautiousness and being alert and musicianship, you guys are wonderful. I can say the same for wardrobe and technology back here. They did a couple of mistakes yesterday. You were great, boys. It wasn't your fault. I have to say. Okay.
All right, thank you very much.
そして噂に聞いた儀式。
Okay. Go. Dave, Salave.
Father, we thank you that the works of our hands are blessed. We thank you for the talents that you've given us. We thank you, Father, for the welcome that we received in Japan. We thank you that as we go forth, that the hands of the Lord go before us and make the sky we safe. We honor and praise that you watch over us and that you keep us, Father, in your ways. In Jesus' name we pray.
Amen.
Wow. So I got to ask you, what does that bring to mind?
It was the what's really cool and what was really special about that time is that we were a family, we were a cohesive group. And even as the tour progressed, we got even more close than we were when we first started. I think Michael really set the stage doing the prayer circle and bonding prior to going out on stage and doing what we were about to do. I remember that particular first show, I was terrified. We got underneath the stage and we were in a really big stadium in Japan, and you heard them like it was like, ah, and I was like, oh, that's loud. And I started shaking, and Michael's next to me and he's like, are you nervous? And I said, yeah. And he goes, and then he was like, he said one of the coolest things ever. He said, good. He goes, take this feeling in. He goes, it's good to be nervous. It means that you care about what you're doing. And he goes, take this in because it's the only time you're ever going to feel this moment. And I was like, okay. And he goes, and then go out there and hurt him. And I was like, okay.
Wow.
And I think that him being aware enough to know, to feel that from me, and then to say that to calm me, again, being very aware of everything that's going on, which is another thing, that I learned from him. He was always present on stage. As I know people, he was shy, but not on stage. That was where he was the superhero, and he, because he knew he'd been doing it since he was little. That was where his strength was. And I learned, I remember in school, I was pretty shy. I had friends, but I got picked on a lot. It was like all those things. But on stage, I became a superhero. I became a different person. The whole Mohawk thing. We were in rehearsals, and then the costumer at the time, he came in with drawings, and there was a drawing of a guy with a chain around his neck and a Mohawk. And Michael goes, "That's you." Oh, okay. And he goes, "No, everything." And I was like, "Oh, okay." And then they're like, put all this hair in my head and then shaved it, made it a Mohawk. And then as the tour progressed, my hair started growing. And so it became more of me, more of my hair. And you see, even Randy's hair got bigger. He loved movies. So my particular character was inspired by the Road Warrior, the Mad Max movie. So there's a guy in there with the Mohawk with the stripes. So when I knew that they were inspired by it, I asked if I could do the two stripes on my face, because I was like, I'm gonna kind of be I'm a kind of a warrior, like a road warrior. So I want that war paint. And they were like, yeah, that's cool. So that's where the two stripes came from.
How interesting. I would have never thought, Michael, the artist, would be so involved in the details like that. You never really think about him being involved in things like just the look on stage for dancers. And it sounds like he was very involved.
Yeah. And he, we learned a lot doing our Japan leg, because that was our first leg. And that was kind of, I think, the kind of a practice for the next leg, when we were going to go in. So part of the changes were some of our outfits changed, and he had Michael Bush talk to us, and Michael Bush is like, what do you feel comfortable in? And then they started to create outfits. What kind of stuff do you like? And I was like, for me, you know, I was 18 years old. I dug Prince. I was like, I like the way Prince's collar goes up. And I was into that kind of thing. So they're like, oh, we'll do that. So that's why I had the collar up and the, you know, and the stripe. And then they customized our outfits to fit the personality of the person / character.
Nice. Okay. And so I know you just mentioned that the tour kind of changed after Japan. It was like, as you mentioned, the kind of costumes and the look, but also the choreography, right? It kind of like morphed into a different show after Japan.
Yeah. So Japan, because Japan was a way for us to, I think, all of us to really get to know each other on stage and really to, it was kind of, like I was saying, not a rehearsal because we were really doing concerts and we really were present, but it was a learning experience for us on how to build for the next show. So when the first leg of the show was kind of a combination of things that you might have seen on the Victory Tour, also mixed with new stuff.
Yes.
So like if you go back and you see the two tours, you'll see similarities here and there. And then once we came back, he talked to Vincent, and then Vincent came in and restructured the show. And he goes, there needs to be more of you. He goes, we can do a section about you and your brothers, but there needs to be more of you.
Right.
Because that's what they're coming to see. And so between Vincent and Michael, they created the next version, which is what you saw in the picture with the black, you know, and the outfits. Our outfits changed. The essence of the show was still there. The energy of the show, you know, because for me, it was like, I remember Vincent even going, it's crazy how simple this show is in comparison to shows you see nowadays, but how effective it was, how it still creates a feeling for people when they see it, because I love the fact that the band and the singers and the dancers were all involved with each other. It's like, it's not like, oh, they're back there. No, it's like, we're all together. Like we're all together. And I think that's what sets it apart from sometimes tours that you see. You'll see the artist, or you'll see the artist and the guitar player, or, you know, but you don't, or you'll see the artist and the dancers, but the interaction between, you know, I would start doing things with Don Boyette, and I came up with certain, like, I'm going to do this turn and I'll go into a split. You grab my jacket and pull me up. Cool. And he would walk over and I would do it and he would grab me and pull me up. And that kind of fun interaction made it a blast. Or, you know, like when we're doing Heartbreak Hotel and Jennifer's playing, you know, stuff. And then we all come over and we're like in this group leaning on each other. Again, there's a thing that's a bonding thing that made it very, very special. And that's why all of those people, they're incredible musicians, incredible singers. And I learned so much and got to meet so many cool people while we were on tour because of those people. And it's like, and at 18, it's the best school I've ever had.
Now, I want to ask you, so a lot of those things on stage, was that a lot of improvisation, or was it all rehearsed? And kind of what was the rehearsal process like? Because to me, in order to get something that creates like such an amazing final product, you guys must have had to work so hard behind the scenes to put that all together.
For the first leg, it was Michael and the 4 dancers in a room watching the Victory Tour and watching the videos and putting it together. And he was very specific about the portions that he wanted to recreate from all of the things. So that was just kind of all of us putting it together. When Vincent came in, he honed it in, you know, so you had points from here to here. You can do whatever you want. You don't want to be distracting. That's the thing I had to learn as a young dancer, is when not to do things, because I thought, you know, you want to do everything all the time because you have all this energy as a young person, but you had to learn how to be respectful. Like, don't do certain things when he's doing certain things because it's distracting. Like, be aware. And that took me a little bit to learn. I got talked to once because there were moments where I was stepping on things he was doing, which I needed to learn how not to do. And getting a note like that is important because then you go, oh, okay, now I get it. Like I get it. We're like a framework. He's the main picture. So we have to frame him correctly so that we have times where we get to have our moments. He would allow that to happen. And like all the musicians, all the singers. So we had to learn how to do that even in our dance sections.
And was Michael the one giving notes? Like how hands-on was he with like watching you guys as the dancers, as individual dancers and the cohesive unit? How was that?
So yes, on the very first leg, the last day of rehearsal, Michael, we came into the rehearsal room, which wasn't very big. Like it was pretty small area. It was the old Jim Henson studio, which was originally owned by Charlie Chaplin. So I think there was a whole like thing about that too for Michael. Like we're going to rehearse here,
Right.
because for him that I think there was a special meaning to that. I remember this is before that we were going to rehearse with the like singers and the band. We walked in and he goes, "Hey guys, we're going to do something a little different today." He goes, "You guys are going to do the show one at a time, starting with you." And he started with me. And I was like, "Wait, what?" We had to do the whole 2-hour show by ourselves in front of him and the other 3 dancers. And at the end of it, he would giggle in parts and he would do stuff, and when he giggled, you get self-conscious. You're like, why is he laughing? Why is he laughing? But, at the end of your little run, he always started with a compliment about how great, you did and da-da. And he goes, on this part. And then he would go back and he would go specifically through each thing. And this is just from watching you. Do less of this, do more of this. Don't go too fast here. Da, 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 da. And he was like, because he was aware of where things should fit in the pocket of the music and certain movements. And he was just really honest, but again, terrifying to do a whole 2-hour show by yourself in front of Michael Jackson.
I was gonna
even though he was nice, it was like, but I learned again, it prepared us for what the stage experience was going to be. Because if you could do that, you can do anything. You could be prepared for anything that happens, because you're in the moment and you're so like, it's so part of you. Anything can happen on stage and you can pick up just like that.
So nerve-wracking, but in the end, you feel like it really like helped to enrich the whole performance in the show because you guys were beyond prepared, it sounds like.
Yes, we rehearsed a lot. Like we would do the show 4 times a day.
4 times?
For a week. Like
So
4
that's-
times a day. Once we got it like locked in, he didn't sing like full out 4 times a day, but we would do the show. Like we would go through it because he wanted to, it's like 4 hours and then you take a break and then 4 hours and then you go home and then you do, and you get it so locked in that preparation of like your stamina goes through the roof because you can do a show once, but you're prepared to do it 4 times.
Right. It's funny because I actually had that on my notes because I had read on a fan forum before that during rehearsals, you do 3 dress rehearsals, but now you're saying 4. So that's like even more beyond like what any of us fans would have ever thought. And yeah,
that's what I remember. I remember doing it 4 times, like 2 and 2.
Yeah. No, that's amazing.
Yeah, I think when we got to Dangerous, it was shorter, but it was because it was a bigger stage, it was a bigger show, and it was a little bit longer. Mm-hmm. But like on the Bad Tour, that's what I remember is like we really cut through the show quite a bit. Like and then once we got to when Vincent came in and fine-tuned it, again that changed, and we went to Pensacola, Florida, to be in a stadium to get used to being in a stadium, like in an arena, so that we understood how things were going to sound. We could do some of the stuff. We could really try out the show because you need to do that. You can only do so much on a sound stage, especially with like the Dangerous tour, the stage was massive. And there was only one sound stage in LA that could hold it over at Universal Studios because it was so big. And they couldn't build it up. Like it could only be up so far. So it wasn't as high as what you see when we were on tour. It was a little lower, but he could do all the things because the stage was huge.
Got it. And in comparison to the Bad tour, it was even a bigger.
It was bigger because it was 2 levels. Like it split apart, and it could move. So there was a lot more involved, technically with that particular stage that was different than with the Bad tour.
Okay. Well, because I heard you say something and I'm like, I have to ask Eddie about this. You mentioned the Victory Tour and the similarities and how you guys kind of studied the Victory Tour in some parts for the Bad tour. I have a clip because this is like one of my favorite parts of the Bad tour. It's Shake Your Body Down to the Ground. And this little breakdown that you guys do. Let's watch it and talk about it.
Yeah. Yes, that was. I think I was emulating Marlon. I think Marlon did it on the Victory Tour.
Yes.
I think that's who. And the whole premise behind that is that you get so caught up in the soul of the music that it makes you like you lose control of yourself. And then they're talking about it made for a real fun moment, like especially the trash talking. I was always trying not to crack up because I can hear them, and they're like, "Go do something about that man," like this. But I think that was it was a way for us to do something to honor the brothers. Also, that whole.
That's so awesome.
Yeah, I remember sometimes he would let that thing play out, and I would get cramps. Because you can only body roll for so long. And I was like, it hurts.
I was going to say you were body rolling, at least in this one. It was like a good 3 minutes. And I had to really condense it down.
It's forever. And then that's again, Michael's humor. He knows, he's aware. He was aware. He's like, oh no, I'm gonna let him go for a while. And then the trash talking and the stuff like that. Because on the Victory Tour, they're talking about their brother, and on this one, I'm doing Marlon's part, basically.
Yeah.
So, it was an honor to be able to do that part. It was cool too on that particular, to give him a vocal break, to be able to talk to the audience, to get the audience pumped up, a way to connect. That was something that he trusted me to do. So that was fun for me.
I remember in watching this, in preparation for this discussion with you, I was watching and I noticed that you were the one that was like, "Konbanwa" in Japanese and greeting everyone. Is that something that you
Yes.
did just for that show, or did you was that like your assignment ever? Like, was that something you did for every country that you guys went to?
I think we did it in Australia and Japan only.
Got it. Okay.
And then we came back home, and then Vincent redid the tour. And again, those are the elements that we're going to make the show more about you, and they're elements that they're all going to bring in, but we're not going to pull the focus off of you.
Yeah.
You know, in vocal breaks, they found other ways to do the vocal breaks for him. So but it was like, yeah, to be able to do the greeting and to be able to get an audience pumped up, and he would towel down and he would like drink water, and it was like, for him, that's what he needed. He needed that little break right there, because that's where, I mean, there's a lot of energy going into that.
For sure. I'm just curious, do you ever go back to YouTube just randomly and look up old performances or look up short films that you were in?
Yeah, sometimes what's funny is, so like I work with kids, I teach kids dance now. And a lot of times, they're competitive kids, and they'll use a song of a video I was in. And sometimes they go, hey, didn't you do something? And then I'll show them, and they're like, that's not you. And I'm like, it is me. It is me. It's just me younger. And they're like, you don't even look like yourself. I was 18. I was an 18-year-old. So that's kind of fun, when that happens. There's a gal that I used to teach, and she recently, she did Smooth Criminal as a tap dance. And the studio owner asked me if I could help her with little Michael-isms. And I told her, I was like, for sure. And I came in and I said, well, he did this. I would just, you don't have to do these things. These are things how he would do it,
Yeah.
And she recently, she got a really good score, and she goes, I did the kick finally the right way. And I was like, yeah. Because trying to explain that to people, they're like, wait, what? I was like, it's kind of a whip kick. Like you whip it, and it's not like you just kick it up. Like you have to whip it. I had to learn by watching him over and over and over, because we would do it. So I think those are fun things when I get to share, or I'll show them pictures sometimes of stuff from some of the videos, because they ask, especially the little ones. The little ones are curious all the time, and they start to find things out. They're like, wait, you did what? You danced for who? And they're like, yeah. And then I'll show them there. And again, I also try to show them, do you see how like in everything you're a different character? I worked on Beauty and the Beast, and I was a tea kettle, and I had to show that. I was like, see, I got the crazy purple like goatee, and they're like, whoa. I was like, that's not my real hair. They gave me a goatee. It's like glued to my face, and they're like, ew. Yeah, but so those things are kind of fun.
Oh, well, I love hearing about that. And I remember when I talked to Vincent, he mentioned that kind of Michael Jackson helped to kind of make the male dancer cool and, really popularized it. Is that something that you experienced? And, what's kind of the thing with male dancers now, since I know you're teaching, right?
Yeah. So he opened the door to, again, his goal was to bring back musicals. Like that's what he loved as a kid. Like he grew up, he idolized, Fred Astaire and Gene Kelly and the Nicholas brothers. Like he's like, so when I was learning dance, I was the only boy. Like the only boy. I was a professional drop-in studio called Dupre's. I walked in. I wanted to take tap classes because I had done a musical, and someone goes, there's a great tap teacher here at the studio. You should go check him out. Because I was looking for a new tap teacher. My tap teacher had retired. And when I walked in, they're like, oh, there's a boy. And I was like, hi. They're like, hey, do you want to take, I was like, I want to ask about this tap class. And they're like, well, do you want to take ballet and jazz too? And I was like, nope. Nope, I'm good. And they're like, are you sure? And then they asked me to go watch the ballet class, and there was a really pretty blonde girl teaching the ballet class. And I was like this, I'll take ballet. I was like 12 and a half. But I was so blessed to get on the scholarship program there. Those teachers instilled such work ethic, like in how you conduct yourself in class, how do you conduct yourself on a set, how you do certain things, which paved the way for me to get into videos. And then Michael he made it cool for guys to dance, to move, which just carried over. And now, like, I mean, all the artists, you could go through videos now that still emulate him, and dancers are an integral part of how to express what the music is. And artists realize that, and smart artists especially, they understand that the dancers help tell the story. And through that, you can create amazing, beautiful pieces of work. So it's cool to see more guys dancing now. Like it's cool to see. I notice it. Like we recently got two young boys taking classes. I mean, they're young, taking classes at the dance studio. And it's neat to see how they get excited when they win an award. They're like, oh, that's cool. I got an award because of this. The hard part is sometimes keeping them there. It gets harder when you get into middle school and high school, unless, like, I recently judged at a dance competition. There was a group of high school guys who came in individually. I heard a couple years prior to do solos, just to try it out. And then they made friends, and then they created like a crew. And then they teach themselves, and they created their own routines, and then they studied other crews. And then they came back a year later and they competed as a crew, and they were so good. Like it was cool to see. And it became something. And I talked to him afterwards. I was like, hey, what you're doing is really cool. I know you guys are all moving on to college now, but if you can find a way, if you're still staying in the area, to maintain, because guys seeing guys do this stuff, it makes them feel safe. And then they're not as embarrassed.
Right. It's like, it's impactful for sure.
Yeah.
And I also wanted, because I hear you just mentioned college years, and I heard a quote from you that you said that your college years were spent touring with Michael Jackson. And
it's true.
I want to get into the next tour that you did with Michael Jackson, which is the Dangerous Tour. So from 1992 to 1993, I believe I have a clip from the Dangerous Tour. And this is just, I think, one of the most fun moments of the tour for me to watch. And I can't wait to hear about your experience with it actually being on stage. So let's watch this. Do it! The magic trick.
Yes. Magic tricks, yes.
So you helped Michael do this magic trick in a magic trick in the Bad Tour as well as the Dangerous Tour. Can you tell us a little bit about that? You don't have to tell us the secret behind it, but just tell us a little bit about it.
So on the Bad Tour, we had a similar kind of thing where he would walk up some steps, curtain would fall, the curtain would raise up into the air. I would pull a string and then he wasn't there anymore. He was somewhere else. Very similar to what we did on the Dangerous Tour, except it was a seat. On the Bat Tour, there was an instance, it's probably the only time I ever heard him raise his voice, where the curtain came down and then it came down again. So he was still there. So he just, being the pro that he is, walked down the steps, almost tripped, which was, I'm glad he didn't, but walked down the steps. And then after the show, everybody involved with the trick was called into a meeting, and he was pacing, and he was basically telling us how that can never happen again. It never happened on the other tours. So we have to make sure. There was a particular crew person who decided to kind of throw me under the bus and said he pulled the wrong rope. And I was like, no, I didn't. I was like, no. And I was like, we can go back and watch the video if you want, it's like, but I was like, what is going on? So after the meeting, I was scared I was going to lose my job. I was shaking. And I went into one of the bathrooms in the arena, and Greg Fillinganes came in. He goes, "Are you okay?" I said, "No." I said, he goes, don't worry. He goes, nothing's going to happen. He goes, you can't be replaced. That crew guy can get replaced. You can't get replaced. So that dude, whatever he said, because I was like, I don't know why he would say, he goes, well, they can replace him tomorrow if they need to.
Yeah.
They're not going to do that. And he goes, I'm sorry that happened. He goes, don't worry. It'll be fine. And I that type of encouragement from Greg really meant a lot to me. Again, this goes back to people treating us like we're family.
Right.
And then I remember the tour manager, I think it was Benny. Benny came up to me and he's like, hey, and I was like, look, I don't really want to do the magic trick. I'm a dancer, and obviously, if people don't think I can, give it to somebody else. And then nobody wanted to do the magic trick. Everybody's like, no. So then Benny came back and he's like, hey, look, nobody's going to be able to, you've been doing this. And I said, well, I don't want to ever get in trouble for something that I didn't do, so if anything goes wrong, I just don't ever want to be in that room ever again. He goes, okay, deal. I was like, okay. I was like, you can talk to me about it, but I don't want to be in that room.
Right.
And
that's a lot of pressure.
It was. And then we found out it was a faulty hook, which was, guess whose job? The crew guy. Mm-hmm.
And he tried to throw you under the bus.
He totally did. And okay, now this is probably not one of my finest moments, but it's kind of funny. So I remember the next show after they had fixed it, I pulled the rope. I grabbed it with my middle finger on purpose, looking at him. And it was like, because you're 18, why would you? And I was and then I was angry. And then it's the same thing. You just have to learn, you don't panic. If there's something goes wrong, you just have to deal with it.
Right.
On the second tour, they came up, the very first person they walked up, they're like, hey, we have this idea. And I was like, okay, here are the rules for me. I don't mind doing it as long as I don't get blamed for anything. I just have to know how to do everything. And if anything goes wrong, I don't want to be in the meeting. You can tell me about it. You can tell me I don't mind if I do something wrong. You can totally tell me, but I'm all about details. So I'm really going to try never to do something wrong. Same deal. It was cool. I forget who did the first one. I know on the second tour, it was David Copperfield's crew came in and set up.
Was it Franz Harari?
Possibly, because I remember meeting him. I met Siegfried and Roy came in and helped us with stuff.
Okay.
There were different groups that helped with different parts of the show. So I don't remember which groups. I remember Franz was really nice. Siegfried and Roy were super, super nice. Copperfield, I didn't really get to have many conversations with him. He just kind of came in, watched it, and peaced out. His crew guys were really super nice. The guys that, and they taught me how to do certain things to sell the illusion. So
Now, I have another clip of I think it's a dangerous tour that I found online and wanted to show you this and ask you about it because I've never heard this talked about. Let's check this out. Okay, so 2 questions. Do you remember this moment? And had this ever happened again after this?
Yeah. Well, okay. Answer to the first question. Yes, I remember that moment. It's, people get very excited about Michael, and sometimes they're overzealous, and 99% of the time they don't mean any harm, but you don't know. So when that gentleman jumped up on stage, Randy and Lavelle were in the front, and they're the ones that grabbed him. And then I think Lavelle physically pushed him back to the bodyguards because they came out right away. And Lavelle grabbed him and pushed him. And then they're looking, and I'm watching, and I'm going, okay. And we were like, this is a part of the music we're in. We're cool. Let's go to the breakdown. And the energy in the breakdown was way different. It was much, much more heightened at that point. And then we got off stage, and Michael came to my dressing room looking. He goes, who grabbed the guy? And I was like, it was Lavelle and Randy. He goes, are they in here? And I was like, no, they're on the other side of the stage. And he goes, will you tell him I said thank you? And I was like, yes, I will totally tell him that you said thank you. And it was but he came to the dressing room first to say thanks, and then went to get ready. And it happened occasionally. We had instances where people could make it up on stage. On the Bad tour, we had a guy come down from somewhere from the 2nd or 3rd level of Madison Square Garden and made it onto the back of the stage. And I heard he came down kind of like Robin Hood with a belt.
Oh my gosh.
Sliding on some. I was like, it was crazy. I was like, he did what?
That's
and
commitment right there.
From way up there, like Robin Hood. And I was like, So he, I remember he got on stage because I was like, who's the guy that got on stage? And they're like, and then that's when they would explain where he came from. But I remember the bodyguards got out there. He was dancing in a suit. That's all I remember. He's an overzealous fan, just boogieing down. And Michael always was aware of his surroundings, so he would back off. He was never aggressive towards anybody. The bodyguards were the ones that would take care of it.
Yeah.
We sometimes had girls that were a little, when he does.
She's Out of My Life.
Oh, huh?
She's Out of My Life.
Yes.
Where
when he cries.
Yes.
And they bring the girl up. Sometimes those girls would get crazy.
Eddie, can I ask you, was the crying real? Because when I was little, I was like, this looks so real. It was touching.
Honestly, I think he was giggling more than anything about what just happened. I think he was always. He also knew, it's a dramatic moment. He was gonna take. It's also breathing time for him. That
makes sense.
Yes.
Because he doesn't have to sing. He's just he's covering his face.
Yes, covering his face. But yeah, sometimes, man, because we got to watch when they would bring the girl up, and 80% of the time the girls were just shaking and crying, but nothing. And then every now and then I remember there was one girl, and when they tried to pull her away, she grabbed him, and then they're pulling her, and then the bodyguard had to put her on his shoulder, and she's kicking and banging on his back, and he gets her backstage, he puts her down, she slapped him, and then she fainted. And I was like this, And I was like, and then he came back to check on her. He was cracking up because he was like, she just slapped me. And I was like, but then she fainted. So he came back to check on her to see if she was okay. They gave her some water. They got her back out on. But it was you just, again, you never know. I mean, she was she was doing so good until they tried to pull her away.
Yeah.
And we saw one, I remember there was one time where the girl, they pulled her away, but she lost, like she fainted, but she started fainting like towards the audience. So the guards had to catch her because she would have fallen down the stairs. Like she was like falling. And we were watching, I was like, oh, because it was like, you could feel it. You could feel like she was going to go. So we used to stand there and try to guess how long it would be before the girl would faint. Because generally, I mean, it's the excitement,
So
it's the
wild.
heat, it's the like all the stuff. And you would sit there and sometimes like instant, sometimes like I said, later, like you'd see it happen a little later because your adrenaline kicks up so high.
Yeah.
So yeah, I love that moment in the tour. It would crack me up. Like cause he would milk it. Like it's a moment. Like he was aware.
Well, I want to ask you, and I know we're getting close to time here, but I have a couple more quick questions for you. There's this clip that came out in the early 2000s that Michael, he released Private Home Movies, and he talks about touring. And since you were on two of his tours, I want to ask you about this clip and what you think about it.
Okay.
The record company usually like for you to support your album and go on tour. And I don't like to. I do like relating to the fans, giving the fans a chance to see you face to face, because you go from Hong Kong to Africa to China to Brazil to, Singapore, Switzerland, London, Paris, Russia, and the stadiums are just jammed, and the energy is great.
Well, can we just do it again without the negative thing if you don't like the tour?
I don't like the tour. I go through hell. I go through hell touring. Okay, then I'll make it positive then. Well, you know the truth. Okay.
And passion.
I love to tour.
He told us about it. Like, it's hard. It was especially hard for him. I being on tour, I could go out, I could go and sightsee. He would try to, they would make arrangements for him, but it was very different. Occasionally we would experience a little bit of what he would go through we got chased in once we were in, I think we were in Rotterdam, and Dominic and I went to Burger King just because it was close. And there was a fan in there that recognized Dominic, because I would always I wore a hat in I had the Mohawk at the time. So I wore a hat and I would wear a ponytail. So I really didn't look the same because it would be, braided. And they recognized Dominic. They asked us for an autograph. Then they came in with somebody else. They asked for an autograph. Then they came in with like more people. And then, and I was like, Dom, we should probably go. We came outside. And as we were coming out, there's a big group of people already moving towards us. So we kind of cut through this alley, and then they were running at us. And then when they started running at us, we started running down the alley. And when we're running down the alley, we came around this corner, and there's another group of people in front of the hotel. They start running at us. And I'm like, oh no. So that was our way into the hotel. Then there was a casino entrance to the hotel, and it's like a revolving door. And so we have there's probably a good 100 people running at us. Dominic and I were flying, and we went into the revolving door. I mean, it starts going. And as soon as we got through, the security person looked, and we pointed, and then he hit this button, and it shuts the door. So it doesn't move. And they hit the door, and they're like, Goosh! And it's bouncing up at the door. And it looked like, those Walking Dead movies where they're like,
yeah, with all the
and
zombies.
I was like this. That's crazy. So just experiencing that, I couldn't imagine what he went through. That. Yes, you love and you appreciate all these people that appreciate what you do, but not being able to just be normal and go somewhere and do something. That must be really, really super difficult. So the times that we got to spend with him, going places, going to amusement parks, and those are special. They were fun, because there was a normality still about it because we were as a group, like a family hanging out.
Right.
Those were neat, especially on the Bad Tour. We did a lot on the Bad Tour. We had a lot of time.
I have a couple pictures that I want to go through until we get to, we'll just look at these pictures and get to a picture of you, Michael Jackson, and Bubbles that I want to ask you about.
Yeah.
So can you tell, because I've always wondered, what's the story behind this picture? Is there a story behind it?
Okay, so we were in Japan. We had just gotten to Japan. We found out Bubbles got out of quarantine. And Dominic called over to the hotel to ask if we could take a picture with Bubbles. And the security, they're like, oh, yeah, because Michael had mentioned, hey, if you ever want to get a picture with Bubbles, just call the hotel and we'll arrange it. So Dominic, I was shy that way, but Dom was like, oh, I'll call. So Dominic and I, he's not in that picture, but he had a similar picture with Bubbles and Michael. So we went to the hotel, and when we got there, they're like, oh, Mike wants to say hi, go upstairs. We were in Japan. And so we went up to the penthouse, and Michael was there, and he's like, hey, how do you love Japan? It's so beautiful, isn't it? And then we were like, yeah. And then they brought Bubbles in, and as soon as the trainer walked out of the door, Bubbles lost it and started running around the room. And he was like running, and then he slapped my like calf, and I was like, ow! and Michael's like going, Bubbles, stop, Bubbles, no. And then the trainer heard, and he did this belly slide across the table like he was being a chimp, you know.
Bubbles on the loose.
Yes, and then the trainer walked in and looked at him, and he looked at the trainer, and then the trainer pointed to the corner, and he walked over to the corner, and he sat in the corner, and he had a timeout, and he was going like this.
Oh.
And I was like. And so that picture, if you really look at that picture, Bubbles is not happy. He's not a happy.
Oh,
he is mad.
Bubbles.
He's like, he's mad. But he he was little then too. So he was super cute, super, super cute.
Aw. Okay, so I got just two last questions that I want to ask you. Something that I know a lot of us fans, we love Remember the Time. Love it. Never really got to see it live. And I know you were a part of the rehearsals for that. Why did we never get to see that live on tour?
So there are a lot of people that we did it one time. I had never seen the footage. There's a rehearsal footage of us on stage, rehearsing it on stage and not like we weren't in a rehearsal stage. There's that footage too. There's rehearsal footage of us rehearsing it in the stadium that people, I've seen that. And I remember we did it once, and Michael, he riffs so much towards the end, all up in his upper register. It was really, really hard on his voice. It was physically demanding on all of us because we had gold-plated masks that were like with the beards. And so with little teeny weeny like mouth things. So like physically hard to breathe in. We had gold chest plates, and we were wearing turtlenecks and, black jeans with like this like part, kind of what they wore on Soul Train, but they didn't wear the masks. So when they did,
okay.
So it was the same similar outfit, but without the mask, because the mask was woo.
How can somebody dance with that on?
Because, there was a costume person that thought it was a cool idea. And I was like, and then he was like, I don't think we're going to do this anymore. And I was like, oh gosh, thank you so much. It was because it's hard. It's a physically demanding piece. And we extended it. So it wasn't even just the dance. It was an entire piece. Like there was like all these things, the elements, and he would be in front. It was too much, and he was just like, I'd rather take that piece out and be able to be better throughout the show. So it's a shame we didn't get to do it more. It might've been cool to do it every few cities, but I understand. Was I upset? Not really, because I couldn't breathe.
Right, yeah. Well, I'm going to for all the subscribers or listeners, watchers out there, you have an assignment. If you see that footage online, please find it and send it. I want to see it. I'm sure Eddie would want to see it again, right?
Yeah, I've only seen I've seen us rehearsing on stage with it. Like somebody was in the stadium shooting us rehearsing it. And that's like, I had a fan once argue that we never did it because they said they went to every show. I was like, time out. I know we did it because we did it once because it was hard one time. And then I think Dorian said, oh yeah, we did it once.
Okay. So you guys were a part of the show. I feel like you guys would know.
And it was early, like early. It would have been probably our first or second show.
Okay.
I'm guessing it was our first show. And then he was like, it's out. Like we're cutting that thing. Because the show, it extended the show. It was a long, there was an intro because he was changing and breathing and we were doing stuff. And then, yeah, man, those masks. Woo.
Wow.
Woo. And they were cool though. I mean, they were cool. I look like King Tut. Did
you ever keep any like costumes or memorabilia, keepsakes from any of the tours?
I have like all of my we have like Pepsi jackets and we had like our bad tour. I have all that stuff. I have a hat. He gave me a hat, like his fedora. So I have one of those.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, I had a coat that it was like we were given a lot of coats, like a lot of jackets on tour. I have a security jacket I think I was given. The Pepsi jacket was kind of cool because it had buckles and stuff because it was, you see it in some of the videos. Some of the bodyguards sometimes have them on.
Oh, okay. I have to look. It sounds familiar.
Yeah. I'm trying to think of what else. We had all the swag. I got t-shirts, like a gazillion t-shirts.
Oh, so cool.
I have t-shirts that weren't made by our group, but fans had made. There was a t-shirt where they had all of the dancers and him in spotlights. And our guy that sold our shirts confiscated those shirts because they weren't allowed to sell them. But then he gave them to us. So I have that.
Oh, that's a cool.
Yeah. So he'd be like, anything you want, you can take it. And I was like, okay, cool.
I'll take it.
So I have so I got a lot of t-shirts like that, where they would confiscate stuff. And then he would go, whatever you want, just take it. And I would send them home in boxes. I would pack it and send it home.
Wow. Oh my goodness. Well, I love all the stories you've shared. I want to ask you what you're up to these days. I know you have an exciting Camp Me dance meeting coming later this summer. Can you tell us about that?
Yeah. So over Labor Day weekend, I run a dance retreat called Camp Me. It's about movement and empowerment. That's where the me comes from. My wife and I do it together. I encourage kids. We want, intermediate to advanced kids because a lot of the teachers that I bring in, that's usually the level that they like to teach at. We want the kids to feel comfortable and not overwhelmed. But they spend the weekend with us. We not only do dance throughout the weekend, but we also do activities like we go zip lining and we'll do rock climbing, high ropes course. We do archery, hatchet throwing, cool camp stuff. So I created the retreat as a way to get kids out of the studio environment for a little bit. It's kind of like what I experience as a kid traveling. To get out of a studio environment, get into a natural setting. Our dance room is beautiful there. And then they get to take from people that aren't always able to teach. So they're friends of mine. I call, like this year, I have Misha Gabriel, who danced for Michael. He was in This Is It. So he's teaching me. He taught him my first one, and he's coming back to teach for me again this year. I had Chucky, who was also in This Is It. He taught last year for me. So that's kind of like the Michael connection. That's pretty cool. But it gives me an opportunity. I also bring in teachers that taught me, that were my teachers, so that kids get to experience a bit of history. Like they have no idea coming in that these people kind of paved the way for all the people that they like, So I think that's an important aspect that we offer. It's non-competitive. There are no mirrors. It's basically a way we keep it small. There's like only 30 spots, which is already starting to fill up, which is fantastic and really exciting. But yeah, if there are any kids out there that are dancers, it's definitely I think a very magical experience. They get to make friends. I've had kids from like our first camp they're all adults now, who have stayed lifelong friends. They text each other, they talk to each other, which is, I think that's cool. That's another aspect of it, is hopefully the kids learn something going to the retreat that they can take back to their studio about bonding as a group, but also bonding with other dancers that are outside of your group, so that your family's extended. Because that's what's carried me through my career, is that I have this huge extended family that I'm able to call and say, hey, would you teach for me? Would you do this for me? And they do it because we're like a big family. And they also want to pass along the message of dancers. What makes us unique is that when we're working on jobs, we are a huge family, and that's for life. So once you work on something, you can stay in touch with people and you can do stuff. And that's what we hope. I want to encourage. I want to make dance fun that way,
I love that.
And then it'll help them if they want to pursue it. Then it gives them, we hope it gives them a base of understanding. Even though it's work, it can still be fun.
For sure. I love that. And I will be definitely including, I guess, the website and your Instagram for everyone to look at in case they're interested, dancers out there interested in applying. And for just to close this out, I wanted to do some rapid fire questions, just like quick answers, some fun things that I want to ask you. So here we go.
Okay.
Hardest dance routine to do live.
Remember this time.
Most fun routine to do live.
Smooth Criminal.
Which project were you most proud of being a part of?
The Bad Tour.
Favorite pre-show meal or snack?
Espresso from the espresso guy that was one of our crew guys that you would pay for in advance for the whole year. His espresso was bomb. Ooh. Like I would do like 3 of those. I would like pow, 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 pow. Energy.
That's where that energy came from. Yeah. Favorite country you traveled to while touring with MJ?
Ooh, every country was special. So I'm not gonna say anyone was. They all had. There's such a cool thing about learning about cultures and places that you've never been. So I feel like I learned something everywhere I went. So I really appreciate all of them.
Favorite costume you wore on stage?
Thriller.
Favorite Michael Jackson short film or music video?
Thriller. For me.
One item you wish you could have kept from the tours or short films but couldn't or didn't?
My Thriller head, because it was me, but as a zombie.
Oh, okay. And if you had to do one MJ routine right now without practicing anything warming up, which one could you still nail?
I had 2. No, I take that back. I can nail a lot of them, but Thriller and Smooth Criminal. I teach Thriller every year around Halloween to keep it something to honor the people that were in it, to honor Michael Peters. And I occasionally will teach Smooth Criminal again so that kids understand about Vincent Patterson and who he was to Michael. So I try to keep up. There are a few that like it takes a little brush, like I got to brush up on, but those 2 are really like it's in my blood because I've done them for so long.
That's so cool. Is it beginner friendly? Can I come to one of those classes? Because I want to learn.
Thriller is completely beginner friendly.
Okay.
Because it's you can make it as detailed as you'd like, and you don't have to be afraid of it, and you learn as much as you can without. When I do the Halloween classes, I've done it. I did it for a group of special needs kids. It was the most magical experience ever.
Oh, I love that.
And how many of them, I remember they were telling me how to do it. They were showing me, they're like, no, you do it this way. And I was like, okay. I stand corrected.
Okay. Last question. If someone asked you to describe Michael in one word, what would it be and why?
Kind and magical. Kind because he was always very kind to me, my family, on everybody. Anybody I brought around. He even after I didn't tour with him, I ran into him at a Virgin Megastore upstairs in the video game department just randomly. And he walked up to me to talk to me to see how I was doing, which I was like, that's a very human thing to do. Not like, hey, you come up to me because I'm the star. He came up to me, took his glasses off, gave me a big hug, said hi, asked how my family was doing. And I think that really showed me who he was as a person. You know, I'm so like he's magical on stage. Like they're just, it's not something you can teach someone. It's just who that person is. And seeing him perform every night, getting to watch him do Billie Jean every night, and then seeing the differences when he would be inspired in the middle of it. And I'm like, when did he learn how to do that? Because like he would pull out these new things and I'm like, okay, that was cool. And that's where I would fan out, would be like, oh my gosh. You know, I think that experience of being able to do that, seeing the person as well as the star, it was really beautiful.
Well, thank you so much, Eddie, for sharing all these amazing stories, all of the inside looks, behind the scenes looks at all of some of our favorite moments. Thank you so much. And thank you for all of the work that you did that I grew up watching for all these years.
Thank you. Thank you. I really, again, can't thank you enough for having me. I hope that, I hope like Michael fans just, you know, keep it up. You know, it's really special. He was a very special person. The music it's like you can't go anywhere without it playing, which is like a really cool thing, you know, and I can't thank them enough for all the love they've given me throughout the years. It's really, really cool. They've always been kind. They send me pictures that I've never seen, which is cool. Anybody out there, if you find some, send them my way. I love those. Like, I love it. Like it brings me back to a time in my life that was really, really amazing.
Oh, well, again, thank you so much. And I hope that I'll get a chance to speak with you again soon. There's so many things I didn't get to ask you about. Super Bowl, the way you make me feel, everything else. So hopefully we can chat again someday.
Anytime. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Eddie. All right. Thank you, guys. Everybody, I appreciate you guys watching. That was an amazing interview with Eddie Garcia. You guys, if you guys find any pictures or videos of Eddie and any of those, hey, that remember the time that they did live, send it our way, send it his way. Big thanks again to everybody for watching. Make sure that you're watching on the YouTube channel, MJFANGIRL TV. Check out the podcast on Spotify, Apple Music, Amazon Music, Club 30s with MJ Fangirl, and I'll see you guys next time.